Hello and welcome to a Better Call Creative video with a twist. As we battle the coronavirus here in the UK, like many other families, I am isolated away without my good brothers. See what I did there? To help prop me up. But like all good trios, we have reinvented our podcast to keep the good times rolling in. In the days since Vince McMahon proved to the world what a heartless man he is by firing a pregnant lady and everyone's favourite dad, the world of wrestling has been giving its opinions on what should happen next, ranging from Rusev becoming the greatest AEW superstar ever, winning every belt and retiring the company, to sticking Vince McMahon's head on a pole for getting rid of the world's greatest tag team, that being the Colognes. So we decided to look through the long list of released talent and rank them in order of how misused and underutilised they have been by the good old WWE. All voted for by the three of us combined, we have ranked these not necessarily on talent or ability, but how many chances each were given and how much potential we think has been lost in this amazing roster of talent. Number 16, the Colognes. Son and nephew of the youngster Carlos Colon, and if you don't get that reference, go and watch 1993's Royal Rumble. Primo and Epico, or Fernando and Diego if you prefer, have been a tag team with the WWE for almost a decade, Primo being on the payroll for the WWE for 18 years. This tag team has been repackaged more times than your unwanted Christmas presents, going from plain old Primo and Epico to Los Matadores with their fun little bull mascot, isn't he sweet, to the dodgy share time tandem of the Shining Stars, before ending up being released under the plain old Colognes name. One-time tag team champions, their use in the WWE had run its course a long time ago, and we hope that they can find success in the hotbed of wrestling, that is Puerto Rico, in their family's WCC promotion. Number 15, Rowan. It's hard to look back at this bearded monster's run in WWE and say he didn't have success. He had 5-star matches teaming with Luke Harper as part of the dangerous Wyatt family against the Usos. Often considered the other man in the group, Rowan's first attempt at a singles run bombed badly, and after briefly being fired by the Authority, now isn't that ironic, Rowan was quickly back in the bosom of Bray Wyatt. And moved to SmackDown later, and Rowan was repackaged again, this time with a mighty hammer as part of the devilish Bludgeon Brothers with his old mate Luke Harper. After an injury, he was given again the role of Muscle as backup to Captain Planet, otherwise known as Daniel Bryan. One final attempt to give him a singles run ended with an electronic spider being squashed by Drew McIntyre, just to show how much fun wrestling is. Positioned as a henchman rather than a monster, a 6'8" guy like Rowan deserved to be much, much more. It was hard to see what more WWE could have done at this point to get him to stand out from the crowd, however, after being positioned as the Muscle for such a long time. A stint away from WWE to grow and develop his character could lead to greater success, maybe, on the shores of Japan. Number 14, Curt Angle. For years since 2006, the universe have pined for the loss of its Olympic hero. A true legend of the attitude and ruthless aggression era, Curt Angle had been away having 5-star matches in TNA, mixed with an array of personal battles against substance abuse. Taking his rightful and deserved space in the WWE Hall of Fame at WrestleMania 33, Vince McMahon would appoint him the GM of Raw. In somewhat of a strange reintroduction into main show storylines, Curt would start an angle, see what I did there, around him having an illegitimate son. This managed to create somewhat of a buzz in the WWE universe as to who would turn out to be Curt's baby boy. Well said, Vince McMahon. How about the member of American Alpha, to the smiles and the whoops of the downtrodden writing team? Yes, says Vince, the black one, Jameson Jordans, and the writing team goes back down into its tears. As many things do, this fizzled out upon an injury to Jordan, and he would then be pushed into a manufactured feud with who else but the Authority, after a short stop as the dad of the Shield. His feud with Triple H would culminate in a rather impressive intergender tag team match at WrestleMania with Ronda Rousey, and this would end his permanent main roster spot. Barring a few spots in the WWE World Cup, and we will be reviewing that soon, and losing to Drew McIntyre in Survivor Series elimination match, a spot in the 2019 Royal Rumble, and Curt Angle would officially announce his retirement match at WrestleMania 35. But who would this be against, I hear you ask? Well, the guy we've spent the last year burying, Baron Corbin. In fairness to Baron, he did do a great job as a heel, and the match was fairly good, but Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels, this was not. Curt was relegated to former stars routine on Raw specials, but could Kurt Angle have been used better? Well, obviously he could, but Kurt Angle was not the wrestler he once was, and sometimes trying to portray that he is more damaging to his legacy. A fairly forgotten second run does little to damage the legacy of this great man, a man whose talents could see him in a non-wrestling capacity anywhere he damn well pleases. It's true, it's true. Number 13, No Way Jose. Despite having one of the coolest and greatest entrance themes of all time and a full head of hair, and I'm not jealous, I promise, No Way Jose made a rather tame impression on the land of E. After a steady, if not amazing stint in NXT, funny looking Jose was plucked from NXT by the grinning puppet master Vince McMahon and plopped so viciously onto the Raw brand in 2018. 3 months of fairly forgettable matches and no real program, and he was not seen again for 4 months, relegated to a true jobber status with spots in the 24/7 division and a short Royal Rumble appearance where Samoa Joe destroyed him. No Way Jose was deemed expendable. Lumbered with a gimmick with a short shelf life, a steady, solid hand Jose was always going to get lost in the shuffle. And whilst the pain of his release may sting, we hope that this will be the shot in the arm his career deserves on the independent scene. Number 12, Lio Rush. Hard to see how little Lio would have ever been signed by WWE pre-NXT days. A small in stature but impressive athlete nonetheless, Lio proved in his short time that he was a very impressive spectacle in the ring as well as damn entertaining on the mic. A stint all too short with Bobby Lashley that had its legs cut out from under it as it was starting to get going. Lio can easily be forgiven for displaying obvious frustrations during this spell in WWE. You felt that someone would kept saying, yes, but he is very small, put him with the little ones on 205, despite his talents offering something on the main roster. Impressive 205 matches meant a quick rise to Cruiserweight champion, but as soon as the shiny new Mexican star Angel Garza came along, you felt like Lio was the Woody to his Buzz Lightyear. His time in WWE was filled with missed opportunities, but his booking makes you think that its fan base will not crave his return as much as others. And sometimes it's square pegs in round holes. With Impact doing good work in the past few years, maybe Lio can be a player there. Joint number 10, Zack Ryder and Curt Hawkins. We weren't able to split them in our voting, so it appears that in our poll, in joint 10th spot will be Zack Ryder and Curt Hawkins. Both men debuted together, so there is a poetic justice in their untimely releases, even though it isn't Curt's first future endeavours. After bouncing around in tag teams after the Major Brothers, Curt's release in 2014 allowed him to reinvent himself on the Indies and in TNA, and when WWE went on a hiring spree in 2016, Curt got the call. Zack, on the other hand, had much more joy as singles in the WWE. The Long Island Loudmouth was one of the first wrestlers to really use YouTube and social media to build a following in 2011. 2011 should have been his year, but like many other things it fizzled out quickly. But Zack's fans stayed loyal. Steady lower mid-card work paid off though, with a moment that will keep as part of WrestleMania history, as despite not actually being booked in the match, he would win the IC title in a ladder match at WrestleMania 32. Whilst his title run was short-lived, 1 day to be precise, that moment will define his career, and suddenly in 2018 the stars would align to see the Major Brothers reunite as Curt Hawkins, after being given the always successful losing streak gimmick, would team with Zack Ryder once more. Zack's WrestleMania success at 32 was somehow, maybe not, kinda not at all, replicated at WrestleMania 35 as the duo defeated the Revival to capture the Raw Tag Team Championship in the pre-show. However, with no real tag team division plans, the duo never defended the gold on TV, and 2 months later dropped the gold and were relegated to jobber status again. Can't help but see these guys as company men. It will be really interesting to see their next steps. If WWE come a-calling post-coronavirus, will they go back? I hope they have a few good years away from WWE, and a certain Mr. Rhodes is a big friend of Zack Ryder. Number 9, Eric Young. Former TNA Grand Slam champion, and that doesn't include the World Beer Drinking Championships currently held by Better Call Creative's Sam Chance, Eric Young's signing with WWE seemed a little out of place. So linked with TNA was Young that many a casual fan never expected him to make the switch to WWE. Despite this, he would have great success as the leader of Sanity, a cyberpunk-esque group with Killian Dane, Alexandra Wolf and Nikki Cross. This successful run in NXT didn't lead to a similar success on the main roster, and after a short but forgettable program against the New Day and the Usos, the team disbanded. In a baffling move, WWE.com would blame the lack of success of the group on being in the same division as the New Day, Usos, Bar and Bludgeon Brothers. The mind baffles why you destroy a talented group because you have other talented people. Why not just book them with them? Young, though, would end his time in the WWE as the Forgotten Man on Raw in the 24/7 division. Again, age and size was always going to be tough for Eric Young in WWE, but there has never been any doubt of his creativity and charisma. Now a free man, there are plenty of places we'd like to see Eric next. Romantically maybe at Impact, but maybe at the highly impressive NWA show currently on YouTube. They would benefit massively from someone like Eric Young. Number 8. Aiden English. Divisive on our list, number 8 is Aiden English, who had a rather eclectic career in WWE. Starting out on the main roster as a member of the Vaudevillains, a highly stylised throwback tag team who'd had great success in the boom period of NXT. A gimmicky tag team that never stretched its legs enough on the main show, they quickly plummeted down the roster, and when Simon Gotch, Aiden's tag team partner, was released, some people could be forgiven for worrying about Aiden's spot in the company. However, tagging on to what was the hottest act in the Federation in 2017, Aiden became the mouthpiece of the ever-popular Rusev Day. More on him later. And it seemed like the rebirth of this warbling announcer stroke tag team partner would help his career. However, as we will find out later, Rusev Day didn't quite work out, and English's talents on the mic was recognised as he was given a spot on the 205 Live commentary team. It seems like previous spots that he was finding a groove, only to be quickly replaced, this time by Byron Saxton. Not exactly an upgrade. Aiden's release isn't entirely surprising, given there have been concerns about his spot since 2016. However, his talent is undeniable, and whilst WWE could defend his booking, they never allowed him to flourish in any role he was given despite impressive showings. Aiden could easily show up anywhere in the Indies, and maybe MLW could be in need of a bit of English. Number 7, Sarah Logan. Depending on when you see this, Sarah Logan could be back with the company. Such is the turmoil that the WWE is currently in, it would hardly be surprising to see her back if the rumours are to be believed. Sarah was part of what many would consider the second wave of incredible women to come out of NXT. Following on from the 4 Horsewomen, Sarah was pretty forgetful as the other girl spot in NXT before a shot on the main roster as part of the extremely underrated Riot Squad. A modern, cool group led by Ruby Riott and complemented by Liv Morgan, the trio played the foiled heels on both rosters, never quite getting the big win and always seemingly on the wrong end of the feuds with the big players in the division. Logan, though, like her partners, continued to put in great performances. A singles run on the roster after a shake-up fell flat as she got lost in the shuffle of the high-level women's roster, and what made her stand out as being part of an interesting trio suddenly disappeared when the group split. Still very young, Sarah could now stretch her legs in the roster, not so heavily stacked, and with AEW or NWA seemingly trying to develop their female roster, this release could lead to fantastic things for this talented young woman. Number 6, Heath Slater. Having reviewed NXT Season 1, see our archives for that podcast, it feels even more sad for us to see Heath leave the WWE. Being positioned as one of the big players of the Nexus group and getting pinfall wins over Jericho and Edge, as a lot of young talent in WWE has in the past, he was stuck being part of the tag team division, a dark, dangerous, scary place where you're forced to watch the great loved single stars flourish whilst being stuck in a dungeon and fed a bucket of fish heads. holding tag team gold with Justin Gabriel 3 times and later once with Rhino. His most memorable stint in tag team hell was as a member of the 3MB group with future world champions Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre, and if I tell that to a 23-year-old me, he will be shocked. He dodged the bullet in 2014 as he became a one-man band after the releases of Mahal and McIntyre. The comedy though was just not the same for the one-man show format, and back in tag team hell he went with Titus O'Neil, God knows how he survived, and Rhino in one of the strangest yet perfect pairings. As Rhino phased out his career in WWE, Heath ended up where many of his fellow releases ended up, in the 24/7 division. I feel like I've said that before. 14 years signed with WWE, Heath can really count himself as underutilised. Never having the Zack Ryder moment, Heath was and still remains a very solid worker with great charisma. Maybe he could be accused of settling, but loyalty should not be frowned upon, and at Better Call Creative we agree he should have been used much more effectively for at least a few years of his run. Despite him not being a big draw, we have the odd suspicion his charisma alone would be a perfect fit for a growing company with a few billion in the bank. Number 5, Drake Maverick. A pole buster appearing at number 15 in one of our rather intelligent fellows lists, and rather higher in the other 2 members of our podcast polls, is Drake Maverick. The former Spud was quickly established in a non-wrestling role in the WWE as the GM of 205 Live. A very entertaining roster member and seemingly perfect for the GM role, Drake began to pull double duty in a confusing spot, doing a face-heel split as he was made manager of the AOP. Vince McMahon, however, suddenly woke up, screamed he hated managers, and that was quickly forgotten. His run with WWE would not be solely in a non-wrestling capacity, however, as he was put in, you guessed it, the 24/7 title division. However, unlike the previous entries, Drake played a huge part, along with the unsackable R-Truth, in getting the division off the ground. Using Twitter as good as one Becky Lynch, Drake carved out a niche in this division. However, a draft spot to SmackDown seemed to end this spot, despite 6 24/7 title runs. Upon his release, Drake was still 205 Live GM and was scheduled to contest in the Cruiserweight title tournament. A heartbreaking video would highlight how much his role within the company meant to him and drummed home to wrestling fans how horrible this situation was. Despite my personal belief that Drake had a great run and was used actually quite well by the WWE, the consensus of this podcast is that Drake's charisma alone meant he had so much more to give. Drake's charisma again could see employees trade anywhere, but Impact seems the logical choice in the US. If he did want to come home to the UK, I'm sure ICW could find a use for his many talents. Chin up, Drake, you were amazing. Number 4, Mike and Maria Kanellis. Tough one this. 4th in our list would seem like we're throwing a lot of shade WWE's way in the way they used Mike and Marie. It's important to note Mike's recognition of the importance the company has played in getting him into rehab and helping him wrestle away his demons, and in these horrible PR days for the company, that should be commended. Yet his 3-year spell in WWE does feel like a big miss. Mike Kanellis is a big time player and a great wrestler in an era of great wrestlers, but with charisma and a valet, Mike could have been used in a much more prominent role within the company. Debuting on SmackDown and wrestling 4 times before a stint in rehab and seeing out his WWE career in 205 Live and part of the 24/7 title division, Mike would have fantastic unseen feuds with Drake and Tozawa. Ending his time in WWE as a 2-time 24/7 title holder, Mike and his pregnant wife Maria were released last weekend. Tasteless as it seems to release Maria whilst being pregnant, we are happy in the knowledge that Mike is in a much better place in his personal life with a gorgeous family. His in-ring talent could see him head to New Japan, AEW, NWA, well, anywhere he sees fit, and after the difficult times he's faced, he deserves those choices. Number 3, Rusev. I have never met a wrestling fan who doesn't like Rusev, and neither of you, because they don't exist. Debuting after a short stint in NXT, Rusev made his main roster debut in 2014's Royal Rumble and eliminated 4 men and lasted ages in the match. In times where everything old is now looked upon through judgmental eyes, Rusev was cast as the old wrestling trope of foreign heel with his then girlfriend Lana as his mouthpiece. Yet despite this being a throwback, Rusev and Lana managed to make the role work. He was booked into a huge program with John Cena at WrestleMania 31. In a widely agreed upon consensus, that program that the Bulgarian, yes, his Bulgarian not Russian brute, should have won. This loss caused a cooling down of the character and he was placed with the other foreigners in the League of Nations group, but it was no longer cool. After a short forgettable let's forget it spell with Jinder Mahal, Rusev was sent to SmackDown. Despite the desperation of the fans to see him positioned as a face, WWE refused this and he was pushed in the heel role in a feud with Randy Orton. However, this feud and an alignment with Aiden English gave birth to Rusev Day, a gimmick so popular that fans still chant it 3 years on with no storyline advancement. All tag teams must split, Vince McMahon says, and English and Rusev would feud, with Rusev finally recognised as the face and going over in the feud. Rusev would wind down his time with the WWE involved in a love triangle angle between his now wife Lana and Bobby Lashley. A feud all fans said they hated but clicked in millions to watch on YouTube over and over. But hey, at least he never spent time in the 24/7 division. A 3-time US champion, Rusev can claim he'd never been given a main event spot, and that alone is why he's third on a list full of superstars who can claim they were never given the spots that Rusev was, despite arguably having as much talent. Rusev deserved a chance at the main event, that I don't think is in doubt, and for WWE, for whatever reason, they never felt confident enough to give him that. Rusev, it is in no doubt, will be successful wherever the winds pull him from here, and we would be surprised if he doesn't at least have a small run with AEW. Number 2, EC3. The only wrestler we all agreed on should be placed in the same spot on this list, EC3 makes the number 2 spot and made his second debut in the WWE in 2018. Shaking off the old Derek Bateman gimmick, EC3 would flourish in TNA, where he developed through the roster to become a 2-time TNA World Champion. And so fans were excited to see him exercise the demons of the past and make it big in the WWE. Sent to NXT under Triple H, the signs were good and he had good mid-card feuds with Velveteen Dream and a brief feud with the Undisputed Era. However, under a year in NXT and Vince McMahon took one look at his body and thought, we can make this work, and plucked him into the main roster. Putting him straight into a mini feud with Dean Ambrose, he picked up an impressive win over the Lunatic Fringe, but this did not last long, and after Dean got his win back, EC3 was relegated to main event and rounded out his stint in WWE in, well, you guessed it, 24/7 title division. His time was up last weekend, and now with both Derek Bateman and EC3's ghosts to exercise, one hopes that EC3 will steer clear of Titan Tower's doors. EC3 is without question a talented superstar. We all agree, a potential world champion with the right gimmick and direction. And for reasons only Vince McMahon knows, EC3 was never given the chance in WWE, and therefore there is no doubt in our minds he is the most underused single star on this list. But number 1, the OC. Coming in at the top of the list of the most underutilised talent in WWE is the Good Brothers, the Club, the OC, whatever you want to call them. WWE crowned them as their greatest tag team in the world back in 2019, and it shows how little the tag team division is thought of that 1 year later they find themselves out the door. Huge in Japan, the former Bullet Club members Gallows and Anderson arrived in WWE in 2016 and quickly established themselves as a top tier talent within the division. However, the fans craved a WWE version of the Bullet Club, and the refusal to pull the trigger on this, yeah, they write themselves, meant that the interest in Gallows and Anderson started to dwindle. In 2018, WWE finally gave in and positioned the team as faces alongside Finn Balor. However, they felt a platform to get Balor over, and their own push stalled. The Balor Club fizzled out, and in 2019 they appeared on Raw with the MO to turn AJ Styles heel, and they did. It was this group that finally started to give the two men direction, and backing up and allowing AJ to play the Weasel heel culminated in what was the show stealer of this year's confusing behind closed doors WrestleMania. Being part of the Boneyard match between Undertaker and AJ Styles, even in defeat it felt like the OC were now big players in the WWE, but how wrong we were. WWE's decision to cut Gallows and Anderson is one of the most puzzling. Great hands and a timeless tag team, these two could have easily had a division built around them with the right booking. And considering their part in the best match at this year's WrestleMania only 3 weeks ago, hang your head in shame, Vince McMahon. Hang it in shame. New Japan will no doubt call, as will many other companies in the world. And if WWE's moniker of the world's greatest tag team doesn't mean much, the demand alone proves that they are. We hope you enjoyed our list, and let us know in the comment section who you thought was the most underutilised star and what you feel the future holds for these talented individuals. On behalf of my good brothers, I've been Ben Chance of Better Call Creative. Don't forget to subscribe to our future top 10s and video podcasts, and check out Better Call Creative's back catalogue now on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, or our website, which is bettercallcreative.com. We will see you all again very soon, guys. Stay safe.